My guest today is running for treasurer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Elizabeth Dionne. Welcome back to normal.
Jeff, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, glad to have you on. So your campaign, I heard about it a few weeks ago. I heard rumblings of it before I heard about you, and the rumblings were we've got somebody good, really good to run for state treasurer. And I was like, okay.
Glad it was good and not uh-oh.
No. Well, I've been a part of the those conversations of, oh boy, they're running. But no, you were, I don't know who you are. I'm glad you're running because I've heard good things from good people who I trust, and that's a good thing. So first of all, before we get into who you are, what does the state treasurer do of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Because I got to tell you, I'm a lifelong political insider, or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know. I think it controls the lottery, right? That's about all I know.
That is about all that most voters know. So I was at a party gathering last week, said, these are active, involved people. By raise of hands, who's the treasurer? 2 people raise their hands.
Yeah.
So you are in good company. You are not alone.
I actually do know who the treasurer is, but I don't know much about them. Deb Goldberg is the treasurer, but the knowledge is limited. So I'm sure you are here to tell the audience, before you tell us about yourself, why is the treasurer important? What does the treasurer do?
The 2 most obvious things that the treasurer does in Massachusetts are, first of all, manage cash flow. So there's a number of depository banks where you put tax receipts. And you make sure that the state can pay its bills.
Okay.
The second really important thing that the treasurer does is issue state bonds. And that matters for a lot of reasons. It's how we fund a lot of infrastructure. But right now, why it really matters is Massachusetts ranks 2nd in the country for per capita state debt. So we're on a bunch of bad lists, and that's not a good list to be on. Our debt load is very heavy.
All right. So what comprises that debt load? I think in federal terms, it's real easy to knock it in. So I went to school for finance. I've been licensed to sell bonds and mutual funds, so I kind of know that. This is a million years ago, but at one point in time, I did that. The federal government is in debt because we spend too much on maybe entitlement programs, but it's the all-encompassing, added up annual deficits to our federal debt. I thought Massachusetts had to have a balanced budget every year. So how is that debt comprised? What does it make up? Why are we in debt?
So you, again, as I mentioned, you issue debt for infrastructure.
Okay.
So in the same way that I've been a local official for 10 years, we have issued bonds to build a school.
Okay.
We've issued bonds to build a library. We've issued bonds to build a rink. So in the same way, and I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on this, but think infrastructure, think roads.
Okay.
I think a fair amount of it's probably going for green infrastructure right now, for climate infrastructure.
Oh, okay.
And again, don't want to get too deeply into this. It's a little unclear to me that all the debt is actually funding infrastructure. I think some things have been packaged to look like infrastructure. And again, that would be more on the climate side.
Okay.
So you can call it, if you can call it an investment, then you can issue debt. But it is something that I need to find a little more about. I only recently learned that we rank 2nd in the nation for our per capita debt load. So I need to do a little dive to see, are we actually balancing our budget with the help of some bonds?
Well, it may very well be that. I doubt it.
And I want to be clear that I don't know that.
Okay.
But it is.
That's a qualification.
Those are the rumblings that are going around right now, is that some of it's a little questionable.
Okay. Well, it should be very cut and dry. Is you have, you can drive out to the solar panel farms, right? You can see the wind turbines. If there's a council or a committee or some kind of, not so on the up and up NGO or something like that, where $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or $5 million or $10 million has gone to, then you're going to start to peel away that it's. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you might be on the right track with that.
So we're going to be doing a lot of digging in the next 10 and a half months.
Okay.
You are probably well aware of the press release that the GOP issued the end of September listing the outrageous expenses that Deb Goldberg has pretty much used the treasurer's office as her private piggy bank.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, the worst number is $20 million for rental space. Yeah, and I don't know where on earth. I mean, the state owns a lot of property. I'm not sure what they're renting. So
Wow.
need to do a little more of a dive there. A lot of expensive travel, pretty luxurious meals, pretty luxurious accommodations.
Okay, so I'll say this right now. This podcast has been, I'll say, influential in bringing some things to light in the Commonwealth, and there's been action taken. When you have those numbers and where that money's been spent, you are more than welcome to come on as many times as you want, and we will expose those numbers.
Absolutely.
And, it's going to be great.
But I want to go back to your original question, which is, what does the treasurer do? Okay. So I named the obvious things that any treasurer in any state is going to do. They're going to manage cash flow. They're going to manage state debt. Our treasurer is uniquely powerful, and this is why people need to understand the treasurer's office in Massachusetts, because it controls so much, for want of a better word, real estate or assets that the state has. Okay. So I'm going to list three of them. You started with the lottery. Mm-hmm. Typically, a lottery wouldn't necessarily fall to a treasurer. Typically, that might go to a governor.
Really?
But at the time the lottery was adopted, Frank Sargent was the governor. Well, he was a Republican.
Okay.
And so the legislature didn't want him to have it because the lottery has typically been a place for patronage. And I was talking to my college sons last night who were home for the holidays.
It's an easy job, yeah.
And they said, Mom, you can't use the word patronage because people won't understand what it means. But I think your listeners probably do.
Well, we can say hack jobs.
It's basically political favors.
Okay.
You are giving someone a job as a political favor. It has nothing to do with their qualifications. It has to do with their loyalty and their party fealty.
Okay.
So the Democratic legislature wanted to make sure that Bob Crane, who was the treasurer at that time, had access to all that patronage. And Bob bragged about it. He was very proud of patronage. He was not at all embarrassed. He was very open about the fact that these were patronage jobs.
Well, this is one thing that I think is, it's technically not illegal, right? I mean, you can do that. It's if you have these do nothing jobs that pay a decent salary. I mean, they're not CEO level salaries, but if you can dish them out to people who you owe favors to, and they maybe they have a no-show. It's kind of a no-show job, right? Yeah. They don't really do anything. Okay.
Well, I actually think some people do things, but not everybody. Yeah. And when Joe Malone, who was the last Republican governor, was governor, he actually really trimmed down payload, or the number of employees.
Oh,
and
okay.
It's expanded again.
Oh, all right, I get it now. Okay, so yeah, it's they create more jobs that don't do anything, and that runs up the budget. And is that budget come out of the treasurer's office?
The treasurer's office is given a certain amount of money to work with, but if you don't spend that money, it can be turned back to the state and to taxpayers. If you spend it all, then we deal with this at the local level. The end of each fiscal year, we have turnbacks from various departments who we budget to the best of our ability, but hopefully they're not expending it on things they don't need to. Okay. And so it comes back to us.
Okay.
I think something similar would happen if the treasurer's office hasn't expended its full budget. Some of that should be coming back to the overall set of funds. So every dollar that the treasurer wastes is a dollar that's not available for other programs.
Okay.
So I talked about the lottery. The second program that went to the treasurer's office that typically would be in the governor's office is the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. Okay. And that was transferred, I believe, during the Romney administration, again, to not have a Republican governor in charge of another patronage. And again, alcohol beverage, the ABCC, we need to look into. I don't know to what extent. You used the word corruption, and I sometimes say things can be legal and still corrupt. And the way that I define
there's ethics.
The way that, or not even that. I define corruption as working in your interest rather than the public interest.
That's a fair definition.
And so in Belmont, I have been a pretty relentless reformer of a number of issues there. And I did use the word corrupt to describe some of what was going on.
Well, I think we as Republicans need to be better and use that word more often,
Yeah.
because it doesn't have to necessarily be illegal to be corrupt, but also people, when you talk about the corruption that's taking place, our opponents on the other side of the aisle maybe, oh, these are conspiracy theories. It's not a conspiracy. It's just basic corruption. People want working in their own self-interest for money or favors or what have you.
We know that there's corruption. I'll get to the third one. So we know there's been corruption involved with the Cannabis Control Commission because people have been indicted for it.
Yeah.
And not in the CCC per se, but absolutely in dispensing licenses at the local level. So the Cannabis Control Commission was formed in 2017, and that's important to remember because Deborah Goldberg has been treasurer since 2015.
Okay.
So the Cannabis Control Commission has existed always under her purview. It's been a hot mess. To be fair, and also you'll notice that 2017 was when Charlie Baker was governor.
Right.
So there's this trend of the treasurer's office controlling a number of divisions that in another state might be in the executive department or in the governor's portfolio. Mm-hmm. So the Cannabis Control Commission is a strange animal where it reports, the governor appoints commissioners, the treasurer appoints commissioners, the treasurer appoints the executive director. But there's been a lot of dysfunction. This has not rolled out at all smoothly. The state auditor issued a report in August that was pretty much scathing, just saying there were not consistent internal controls, that some people paid for permits, some didn't, significant missing paperwork. That was on the financial end. On the substance end, it wasn't clear that testing that was going on, the testing that was needed was going on to ensure safety of product.
Right.
So again, my hat's off to Diana DiZoglio because she really is not a respecter of persons. She has really gone to bat for the Massachusetts taxpayer.
Yeah.
To figure out where money's being wasted, lost. So these problems with the Cannabis Control Commission are not new. In 2022, Goldberg hired Shannon O'Brien. And for those who don't remember, Shannon O'Brien, you may or may not agree with her politics, but she's absolutely a respected, credible public servant. So she was the Democratic nominee against Mitt Romney, lost. She also served a couple of terms as state treasurer. So she knows the state treasurer's office. Mm-hmm. She knows what she's doing. She came in and upset some of the crony networks in the Cannabis Control Commission.
This was probably, I don't know if it was ever written down in the paper, right? I followed this in the headlines that and I'll bring this up here where I have I'll switch to, here we go. She's back. Massachusetts judge orders reinstatement back pay for ousted pot boss O'Brien. Now, right, I mean, I've known the name Shannon O'Brien for quite some time, for a few decades, where she's been in public service and public life. And
smart, experienced, to my knowledge, no ethical lapses, has not been accused of anything untoward.
Right. So why don't you explain to the audience, in case they're not aware of what happened with Shannon O'Brien?
I think a lot of people don't know what happened, and it's egregious. And let me preface this by saying, when people tell you who they are, believe them. Deb Goldberg, her behavior was such an abuse of power, truly abhorrent. And I've heard other stories about people that she's treated similar to the way that she treated Shannon O'Brien. She is deeply unpopular in her own party. I know this firsthand from actually members of the Democratic State Committee. And she's insisting on running for a fourth term. Anyway, Shannon O'Brien upset some cozy situations. And Goldberg was tired of hearing the complaints. And so instead of trying to get to the root of what was going on, she, with no basis, accused her of racism.
Okay.
If you play the race card, and that's really what she did. Yeah. And racism is serious. I have minority nieces and nephews. It's a real issue. Because it's so serious, you reserve that charge for when it has meaning. You don't cheapen it.
Well, this is the thing that Democrats think that they can get away with over and over again. It's like when you criticize a Democrat and that Democrat happens to be a person of color or whatever, there's immediately, and now it's immediate, and maybe it's even before the accusation of wrongdoing takes place, they cry racism. And I think it's been done so much and so often and at such an inappropriate level that it just, people ignore it now. And I think there's especially the politicians and I mean this, the elected politicians in the Democratic Party, they haven't gotten the memo yet that this doesn't work anymore. So, I mean, it might have worked for a minute. Like I showed the headline on the screen before, you know, she's back. She was ousted and unfairly. It sounds like unfairly.
Well, there's more to the story. So
go, by all means, go for it.
So when you accuse someone of racism, you destroy their reputation. You destroy their career. So O'Brien immediately did what I would have done, which was sue to be reinstated. And she said, I remember, I followed this in the papers because at the time I was so shocked. The evidence was so thin. There were 2 instances. One, she assumed that a black staffer knew a black politician. And because she assumed that was evidence of racism. I mean, you could know someone black for all sorts of reasons. You're in the same party. You might live in the same neighborhood. So to claim that was the basis of racism. And then the second instance that was cited in the papers was that Shannon O'Brien, quoting someone else, said they referred to someone as Asian, who is Asian as being yellow. And O'Brien said, but we don't use that term anymore. And so in quoting someone, so literally those were the 2 examples of Shannon O'Brien being a racist. And the reason it was important is because her contract, she could not be terminated except for cause.
Right.
So the for cause was racism, which if true, I actually think is appropriate. If someone is a racist, yeah, they should not be working for state government. But these were such thin examples. And so...
And one of the examples, she's actually talking about how not to be racist.
She was quoting someone else and saying we don't do that.
Right.
So O'Brien sues, she wins. Goldberg's a poor loser and can't accept that there was no there. So takes it to the appellate level, where the judge issued a pretty scathing opinion saying you've built this on a house of cards. There is no evidence of cause to have fired O'Brien. So she got her job back. More importantly, she got her reputation back. You can take my money, but don't take my good name. So that was really what was it. The key of this was that O'Brien needed to restore her reputation. And the state, not the Treasurer's Office, Goldberg spent $1 million pursuing this case with outside counsel. The GOP has indicated that they think it's actually cost the state about $2 million. We don't know. O'Brien had to spend quite a bit of money herself prosecuting this.
Was she recouped for that?
That's what we think will happen.
Yeah.
I'm not on the inside on that.
Right. But
I have never met Shannon O'Brien. I've never spoken with her. But boy, does she have my sympathy and my respect. At the end of the day, we are all Massachusettsians. We're all Americans. No one should be treated the way that she was treated.
No, and well, this is the funny part where it's not so funny, but I find it fascinating because there's a level of lack of intelligence if you're in the position of Goldberg, and nowadays with social media and all kinds of outlets and all kinds of information being exposed, you're not gonna get away with it. Like, there's too many people out there that still think they're going to get away with it. Now, some people will get it, and there's examples of people getting away with it in the larger scheme of things, and sometimes that's true. But in real time, when you're in the moment, like the state treasurer, Deb Goldberg, with no presence of mind to say, all right, we're going to go after her. She's trying to she was trying to run it, I guess, as a legitimate organization and squeeze out some of the patronage, squeeze out some of the cronyism, so to speak,
but also,
and was getting pushback.
Yeah, standardized procedures. A lot of small businesses, Massachusetts made a lot of promises to a lot of small businesses. Agree or disagree with recreational use of cannabis, it is the state law.
Right.
It is an opportunity for small business owners. It needs to be clean. They shouldn't have arbitrary and capricious requirements. It needs to be laid out. It needs to be very clear. What ends up happening when you have such a chaotic process is it benefits larger businesses because they have the resources, to see through the regulatory chaos. one of the things that I was adamant about as a select board member in Belmont is that I became aware that we had a ridiculous restaurant permitting system where it could take a year and special permits to open a restaurant in Belmont. And I thought, boy, we are desperate to recruit small business. We're desperate for economic development. And so town meeting in 2023, we had a special town meeting and we changed restaurant zoning so that you can open a restaurant now in Belmont as of right. So the point is that I think Shannon O'Brien, again, as a capable, experienced public servant, was trying to put clear procedures in place because that benefits everybody, but it especially benefits small businesses. So she upset that, and we went through this whole process. But what it also shows me is a true failure of leadership. My definition of a leader, and it's something that I've learned in my years of local government, is you hire the best people. And then my job isn't to do their job. My job is to go out and make the political and policy arguments and to bear the heat. Because if I do that, it frees them up to do their job. We have an extremely talented town administrator in Belmont, but she changed a lot of things. She upset a lot of crony networks. And she has taken horrible abuse on social media for this, and sometimes in person.
Yeah.
One union that was unhappy with her distributed pictures in Belmont Center or flyers with her face behind crosshairs. Pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And not going to say which union it was. That's not necessary. But I stood up on the floor of town meeting when we were taking a controversial position. And I said, if you're upset at anybody, be angry at me and my two colleagues. Belmont has a three-member select board. Most have 5, we have 3. And it's an unusually strong select board, meaning there are a lot of things that we have to do under our local town administrator act that others don't do. So we have a very strong person in the position, but we keep a lot of policy under our purview. And I stood up and said, if you're mad at anybody, be mad at us, not her. She's implementing the policies that we decide. So Deb Goldberg's job, when people complained about Shannon O'Brien, her job was to say, I'm taking the heat here. I've made the decision that we need to reform this department. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to listen to concerns. But she's doing the job we hired her to do. Let her do her job. And instead, she caved in the face of opposition.
There's only one reason that takes place, though. It's because she wants to enable the corruption and the cronyism to continue. I mean, these are cut and dry situations where people who, it becomes obvious. And what I wonder is most people out there, hopefully they watch this and they just remember it in the back of their head and they vote for you, and we get people like this out of government, because there is, in Massachusetts, it's really starting to bubble up to the level of
Everywhere.
cronyism and corruption
Everywhere.
of where, if I don't know if it's even at 50-50 at this point, where the amount of people that are on the take, and I say take meaning they have some hack job, they have some line of business that funnels taxpayer monies into their pocket, because the networks are really expansive. And when, your example for Belmont Town Meeting, you're finding out more and more that all of these dirty little tentacles reach its way into our pockets, and we have to just say enough, because it's starting to cannibalize everything.
Well, not only is it cannibalizing, so let me back up. The reason I got into this race in the first place is because of a cost of living crisis that we face. I've got 4 children ages 21 to 29. They can't afford to come back here and raise their families here. I was talking to 2 of my sons last night, and they said, yeah, Mom, this is the number one issue on college campuses. They're both home from school, is affordability. We cannot afford to stay in Massachusetts. None of our friends can afford to stay in Massachusetts.
It's bad.
It is. And, gone are the days of the 1980s when we had the Massachusetts Miracle, and Massachusetts, the economy of which had been foundering, suddenly expanded, and we've ridden that wave for a long time. And we've really gotten complacent. For a long time, there were actually really credible Democratic leaders who were willing to stand up and speak for fiscal responsibility. They worked well with Bill Weld, Paul Cellucci, Mitt Romney. Charlie Baker, it started to slide. Charlie held the dam as long as he could, but boy, look what's happened in the 3 years since he's gone.
Well, this is really important, and people have to understand this. When the Democrats get control of everything, the costs rise. Our budget was, our annual budget when Charlie Baker was 3 years ago, when he was in charge, was about what, 38 billion, something like a little less than 40. Now it's 60.
60. So there's
it's gone up.
Actually, it might even be more. I was reading something that said that fiscal 25 spending was actually a couple billion more than we thought.
Well, even more so. It's like, nobody in the Commonwealth could look at that and go, oh, well, yeah, it's been worth it. We've gotten that much more in value from our state government. It's insane.
No, what we've had is, $7 million in SNAP benefits stolen in Boston.
Yeah.
Because the Attorney General is off prosecuting national issues and completely ignoring all the issues that she ought to be paying attention to here at home. And Massachusetts voters, for whatever reason, and I always respect the voters, always. They seem to like attorney generals who focus on national issues. But what they need to understand is that in the interim, corruption's running amok in Massachusetts, and we can't just rely on the federal government to tackle it. It takes local, state, and federal officials to rein this in, because we live in a law-abiding society for the most part. 99% of people voluntarily comply with the law, voluntarily are honest, voluntarily pay their taxes, voluntarily do what they're supposed to do. If we didn't, then we'd live in a police state, and we don't want a police state. We want well-trained citizens who voluntarily obey the law. But you start seeing stuff like this happen and think, am I the only schmuck who's being honest here? Am I the only one who's being taken advantage of?
Yeah.
So it's really damaging to the norms of being a law-abiding society.
Well,
when stuff like this happens, people are left to say, gee, the state doesn't care. They're just letting this happen. Why am I being the good guy here?
I can't believe, like the other day when the $7 million in SNAP benefits of fraud came out, Maura Healey had the gall to brag about it, that, finally they got around to it. By the way, this is a federal prosecution of
federal.
it. Yeah, federal prosecution of this. And we referred this case to the feds back in November of 24. And I go, November of 24, was that before or after Kamala Harris lost? And it's like, November of 24. I think you were in power at that point, and so was Andrea Campbell. But the cell phone of trying to, finally, thanks for getting around to it, federal authorities. It's like, this is insane. And I have to say this little anecdote that this weekend I was picking up takeout, and I was driving around the corner after I got the food from the restaurant. And I've seen this a couple times before, where there was a minivan parked with a bunch of food, like in the trunk and in cardboard boxes. And I saw like two groups of people like going there and picking it up. And this is a home. This is not like a community center. This is not a food bank. This is something. And I'm going to myself, I started to, I'm just speculating. It's pure speculation, but it's just like, how many people do you know are just carrying boxes of food from, and this is not the first time it's happened. I've driven by this exact spot when I've gotten this takeout before. So my immediate thought goes, well, hey, at least I want to say good for them that they've probably scammed the system, got a bunch of free food off of the SNAP benefits, and are selling it out of the back of the car. And that's the fraud. It happens on that level over and over and over again. We know it's happening. I watched it happen. Yep. And there's not really many other reasons for that to be happening. I'm sure they weren't getting a discount at Costco on the Kraft macaroni and cheese. They probably got it for free somewhere and sold it at half price. So somebody with not that much money will go there and buy it.
So we know the $1 billion that was taken in Minnesota by the Somali operatives.
Yeah. For terrorism. That's really, hang on. I just, sorry. I've had my coffee. I'm going, it's not even that it went in their pocket. It went back to Somalia and funded terrorism. Yeah. And the Democratic Party all over the place is like, they know it's bad, but they're just sort of like, oh, well, we'll ignore it. It's insane.
So there are 2 points that I want to, so the first problem with this kind of corruption is the waste of money. The second problem is that it really damages the rule of law and everybody's voluntary compliance with law and everybody playing by the rules. The third people it damages are the ones who really need the benefit.
Right.
So there are people who are in need. We do live in a society where I strongly prefer that children not go hungry.
Yeah.
But welfare benefits only work if people trust that the system is honest and they trust that it's going to people who actually need it. If that falls apart, people lose trust in the welfare system, and they're not going to want to fund basic programs anymore. So Massachusetts is overly generous in its welfare benefits. You can make, I have worked with various low-income communities. With the various things that are available, it's actually not really profitable to work. So we need to incentivize work and not, and there needs to be a much more sliding scale. But this is getting a little bit far afield of the Treasurer's office, but I think it's emblematic of it. We know there are problems statewide. We know that there are problems in the Treasurer's office from the $1 million plus that was stolen that was reported last month being stolen from the unclaimed property, which the Treasurer also oversees.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh,
what's that?
Well, let me just finish and say I've started referring to this as the Goldberg iceberg.
Okay.
An iceberg, 10% of your mass is above the water. 90% you can't see, it's below. The 10% we can see is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. What's lurking? What don't we know? We really, I think, really need to get in there and
I want to find out about the luxury hotels and all those things that I'm paying for, which is great. But what are you talking? So $1 million. I missed this one. $1 million on what?
So let me go back. The Treasurer's office oversees directly 12 departments, and then Cannabis Control Commission is kind of this funny 13th hybrid. One of the divisions that the Treasurer's office oversees is the unclaimed property division. Okay. And so this crook pretended to be somebody else and stole $615,000 from a family. And a month later, her sons came to collect the money, and it was gone. Wow. And he managed to, the total of what he's stolen so far, he's being prosecuted, is $1.1 million. Wow. So that money is gone.
Let me tell you,
those sons have just lost their mother's inheritance. It's gone.
I had that. My deceased father had an account. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a lot, but I had to go through hell and high water to get it. It was actually out of New Jersey, but it's a whole process where you have to prove it. So if you're not on top of it and running your organization correctly, which you should be, that's heartbreaking. Because sometimes, so on the personal level, sometimes you have a parent or a deceased relative who maybe towards the end of their life they had dementia, or they had any kind of issue or a debilitating issue where they just didn't have the forethought to create a will or track down all their accounts or know what they were doing, and it just slips through the cracks. So that's where the unclaimed property goes, and the family is entitled to that. That individual worked for that money, whether it's in the form of a retirement account, a bank account, or a pension, or what have you. And that was there to support them, but it's also there to support their family. So it's really grotesque that Goldberg is asleep at the wheel. And it sounds like just basic laziness. I'll tell you, I've said this. I can be a little bit more partisan than you can, Elizabeth, on this show. The amount of laziness in progressives are the laziest people in our country. They just want to take from other people. They want to have other people pay for their stuff. When they get elected, they don't really want to do anything. They blame everybody else, don't take responsibility. It's all millionaires and billionaires and all that nonsense, and they never actually want to do the work. And Deb Goldberg is just all of this is just poorly run organization. If Executive Management 101 would solve probably half of her problems.
A major issue is that she has been MIA. One of the things that we would like to do is calculate how many meetings she's missed in recent years.
Okay.
It's a thing. So some point, that's all public record. So we'll be finding out where she's been, because we can also find out her travel records.
Elizabeth is going to be a frequent guest on Back to Normal.
And, we're looking for a few good interns if anybody wants some fun research projects.
So just to take a nice little commercial break, the website is VoteDionne, DIONNE.com, VoteDionne.com. So go help support Elizabeth, donate and contribute to her campaign, because that campaign needs research dollars and interns and a lot of resources to take on Deb Goldberg.
Really do. Can I just make a final point before you break, which is she has a pretty extensive personal fortune that she can spend. Okay. So I do need volunteers. I do need fundraising Just I'll leave it at that. But
Okay.
I am coming into this with a number of advantages in that she's a deeply flawed incumbent. But my disadvantage right now is money for sure.
It will never cease to amaze me that the voters of this state will just blindly they'll just go, yeah, D, check, and not bother to do the research when they're spending their money. They're spending all of our money. All right, so you talked about the situation with the Cannabis Control Commission. Do you have an opinion on any kind of reform that should take place in that, or what like maybe a guiding theme that you'd want to put into place when you're elected?
Frankly, I think it's what Shannon O'Brien is doing right now.
Would you keep her as executive?
Unless I was given a strong reason not to, I would.
Mm-hmm.
She's shown a willingness to do the work. She evidenced by her first year there that she wasn't afraid to upset the power networks, the crony networks, the patronage. So I am a really nonpartisan person. I mean, I'm absolutely running as a Republican, but Republicans in Massachusetts have to get along with everybody. Yeah. And I certainly demonstrated that I would do that in Belmont. And again, I appreciate what you were saying about progressives and other people's money. And
well, but there's a distinction between progressives and regular Democrats. I want to be very clear on that, because there are a lot more, call it old school or blue dog or whatever, Democrats. The progressives are a smaller faction of the Democratic Party now. They're just loud and they're taking over. And so the actual bread and butter of the Democratic Party is what you would traditionally think of that.
I do want to give a shout out to the Senate Vice President, Will Brownsberger, who is standing up against Michelle Wu. He represents Belmont. Yeah, he's actually been a really helpful senator. He's been very, very engaged. But he's standing up to Michelle Wu, who wants to shift even more of the property tax burden to the collapsing commercial sector in Boston.
Right.
And because he stood up to her, she recruited someone to primary him.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that in the paper. So, okay, so here's a little feather in my cap in this show's cap. So 2 episodes ago, we had on Chris Lehman, who's a writer for Pirate Wires, and he had a great piece on piratewires.com about Michelle Wu running the crony playbook of James Michael Curley from 100 years ago. Okay, it was a great article, and it just came out this week that she is being sued by the property owners. We had this right after Chris wrote that article. We had it on this show and it exposed what was going on. A lawsuit has come out after that, where it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
The people who went for an appeal on their commercial property tax rates, which they kept them artificially high, even though the values of the property have dropped significantly. Yep. So they kept them all really high. But those who appealed it for a lower assessment were actually targeted, and the value of their buildings went up.
Not only did this happen, so it's Pioneer New England Legal Foundation that has filed this lawsuit. They were foolish enough to write. They actually there's a paper trail here.
Yeah, well,
there's a very clear paper trail. If you're gonna cheat, don't write it down.
Well, I'm telling you right now, we're not dealing with bright people.
We're not dealing with rocket scientists.
No. This is they do this. Deb Goldberg does. She'll cook up our accusations of racism. The progressives will just okay, well, you want to appeal? Fine, your building's worth more. Which
is a violation of our constitutional rights to appeal.
Yeah.
To file petitions. It's just a clear-cut constitutional law violation.
Yeah.
It's just pretty stunning that they thought they could do this. What really bothers me is Tom Menino and Marty Walsh, think of them what you will. They loved Boston. They were great administrators. Wu inherited a city that was actually in really good shape. And she spent like a drunken sailor. Where is she looking to find efficiencies? Where is she looking to streamline? She has I can tell you in Belmont, there's not an ounce of fat. We have cut and streamlined. I mean, this is part of what, I want to go back to this, but one of my real concerns is the state is sitting on a pretty fat budget and cities and towns are starving. Except for Boston. Boston has loads of money. They have a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
But there's a theme. If there's an undercurrent that I think you're hitting on that's really important here. So Boston, their budget has gone up by at least, I want to say, they're raising property taxes on residents by 13%. Their budget's gone up by 20%. They're building a soccer stadium that in the worst possible place they could think of for cronyism purposes. There's the commercial value is going down because people aren't moving back. Offices aren't moving back into Boston because of the cost of doing business there. So it's this cycle, and yet Deb Goldberg's government is bloated. Maura Healey's administration is bloated. Mayor Wu's administration is bloated. They just keep expanding, and not realizing that there's a distinction here. I'll draw a line between Maura Healey and Mayor Wu. I don't think Mayor Wu likes capitalism. I don't think she likes business. She's not business friendly. There's an antithesis. She wants to consolidate power and be like, well, when business owners go to her and say, we're going to leave, okay, she's fine. Yeah, she doesn't care because her voter base will consolidate then, and she'll stay in power, and she's making them happy. So like the very anti-business mindset. Maura Healey, I think, knows where the revenue comes from and tries to play this game, but it's still, she can't say no to the expanse of her government.
Maura Healey says the right thing, but doesn't follow up with action.
Correct.
So I actually think Maura Healey is very intelligent. She understands where the voters are. She understands the cost of living crisis. She understands capitalism. Mm-hmm. As I say to people, think of capitalism as the way we generate wealth, and politics are the way we redistribute it. So
it's a fair assessment.
Tom Menino, Marty Walsh, they understood that they had to have a healthy economic engine. And they took care of that economic engine, which then spun off revenues and resources that they could use for various welfare programs or building programs in the city. We in Massachusetts, we're killing our revenue generators. We're losing our middle class. We're losing jobs. We're losing companies. We're losing our brain power of our young people. They get educated here and then they leave. These are my sons who are 21 and 23. Yeah.
So back to the functionality of the state treasurer for a second. So there's revenue that comes in by income tax, right? So that's probably the largest generator of state, and it goes through the treasurer's office. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, it goes to the Department of Revenue.
Okay, but there is revenue that comes in directly to the treasurer's office. Is that lottery revenue and taxes off of alcohol and things like that?
Yeah,
how does
there's the lottery, there's taxes off alcohol, and there's cannabis.
Okay.
So those do come in, and what's important about those three is that they do go back to communities. They go back to cities and towns.
Well, the lottery is very specific. It goes to education.
Education, yes. I need to go and look and see what else it funds. But again, if you are running two things, if you're running a bloated lottery, that's a decrease in the dollars and cents that are going back to towns.
Okay.
So if you can streamline expenses, you have more money to send back. In Belmont, we count to the penny. And people say, 10,000 is not that big a difference. For us, it's the difference between hiring a consultant or not for a project. Yeah. So that money does matter. The second issue is, and again, think what you will about legalized gambling, it is the law or state-sponsored lottery. And if you are not running an effective lottery, again, that's if you're hiring cronies and people who are each other's friends and relatives and political hacks, that's not the same thing.
Yeah, they're not incentivized to really. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. The okay, so. Oh, gambling's another revenue source. Is that under the lottery?
No, there's a gaming commission.
There is a game, and is that under the treasurer's office?
No.
They didn't. Is that under the governor's office?
I assume it's still under the governor's office.
Okay.
What I've really been trying to find is an org chart so that I know where everything's located.
Yeah, good luck. I don't think.
I mean, I've been trying to do a dive to see if I can understand how these things interact, and talking to a number of key people who've worked in various divisions. And backing up, this is something I've grappled with. I talked about leadership and how Deb Goldberg's treatment of Shannon O'Brien was a clear failure of leadership. But there's another failure of leadership. You cannot exist in a cocoon or a bubble. You have to be willing to listen to all voices. Because I thought, if I were treasurer, let's say I'm in the office a year from now, how am I going to prevent all these bad things from happening? I can't be overseeing 12 departments plus the Cannabis Control Commission. It's impossible. So what I have learned at the local level, and it's going to apply at the state level as well, as I said, you hire the best talent, and then you give them political cover so that they can do their job. So you're going to ask people, I need you to do a thorough audit of your department. I need you to do a thorough assessment, find all the problems, and bring it back to me. But even those people can't find everything. So the other thing that you really have to do is have a truly open door where anybody from any level of the organization can come talk to you. Because those are your whistleblowers. That's how you're going to find out what's going on. Yeah. And I will say we have several whistleblowers from the treasurer's office, and information will be coming out.
That's great. No, I look forward. I look forward to hearing
the
more
little
about
people who got squashed.
Yeah. Well, look, when people are fighting to cover their butts for whether it's a patronage job or there's a sweet no big contract that goes through, or somebody's brother's cousin's uncle is getting is a vendor that gets a nice deal on whatever it is. I mean, look, this is not uncommon to Massachusetts. This happens in every state, all over the country, and it is real. And I will say, unfortunately, both parties engage in it. But we, as the out party in Massachusetts government, Republicans really have to be on the idea of reform and just hammer this home. Because I think what's going to come out, similar to the Somali thing in Minnesota, we're seeing it up in Maine. There is going to be more and more of these little drips and drabs of some small, some bigger, of absolute just defraud. Little of defrauding the taxpayer. There used to be, I'm a your traditional conservative Republican, right? I read National Review and all that good stuff. And I remember there was, when we would talk about reforming entitlements, to cut the budget from the federal perspective. And they said, and everybody would come out, we're going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. And the eggheads and the people from the think tanks would always say, well, you're only going to get so far. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the budget. No, most of it's really there. And I'm really starting to think, no, I think waste, fraud, and abuse across all of these programs is a really significant amount of money. And I'm going to say so significant, I think it's probably north of 25, 30%, where it is just straight up fraud, abuse, and waste. And if you can save 30%, that's not just a flip of that 30. That's actually an inverted. It gets you back to like a 60% swing on that. And the more and more you get into this, where the SNAP benefits, the luxurious vacations, little bits here and there, but also the
expensive restaurants.
Yeah.
Oh, one of my favorites, and this really kind of sticks with me. And my son said, "Mom, it's not really that big a deal, but it is to me." Over 3 years, the Treasury and Lottery spent $51,000 on water bottles. What are their employees doing? And the thing that really bugs me about that is I literally don't buy water bottles for 3 reasons. First of all, we have MWRA water, which is the best in the nation.
Okay.
Use your faucet. Second, it's wasteful. It's just one of those areas where I don't spend money on disposable water bottles. I bring a water bottle. So I'm happy
to say that for my guests, I always have water bottles in the refrigerator, only because it's convenience. No, convenience, they sometimes come in very handy.
But then finally, as an environmentalist, that's a heck of a lot of disposable plastic. And given that I assume Goldberg defines herself as an environmentalist, why have they gone through $51,000 worth of water bottles?
Well, you could have spent a few $1,000s on those refillable stations and done that rather easily.
So I just think that's emblematic of not walking the walk.
Yeah.
No, we'll preach environmentalism, but we're going to have disposable water bottles.
I'm sure there's a lot more to come out here.
Yes, I do acknowledge that I did appreciate the water when I came in. So I'm not a Puritan about it. I will drink them, but
do you have opinions on? I mean, there have been quite a few. I won't even say them controversial, but I guess people do have an opinion on gambling. People do have an opinion on marijuana. I voted in favor of the gambling. I voted in favor of the marijuana. I thought that the certainly legalizing it in the sense of it wasn't a tax grab for me. It was the idea that people were going to jail for it and possession, and it didn't sit right with me. So I voted for that. I have mixed feelings about it now, seeing a few years out, because you can't drive your car around town in Massachusetts without smelling somebody smoking weed
in their car,
correct,
and potentially hitting somebody.
So I'm starting to have mixed feelings about it. And I wonder to myself, is like, did people do this with alcohol? Like, you never, obviously you couldn't smell it, but if people were, if there was a 1-for-1 relationship of the number of people who were drinking, not drinking then driving, but drinking while driving. I've only experienced that like one time in my life, where I was in the car with somebody and I was like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
and I was like, get me out of here ASAP. But now it's commonplace. People are getting high. So do you have an idea? I mean, you're going to be in charge of the cannabis control. You're going to have to work with hopefully a Republican governor on putting some sort of, in my opinion, better framework around this. I think there needs to be something because we're a few years out from it. We're sort of like stable. This is a stable environment as far as
state.
Yeah, of what we are now. I would imagine some people are like, yeah, I'm not that comfortable with smelling weed every time I'm in my car from the car two cars in front of me.
I've heard a number of people who have the same reaction you do. I want to step back. Prohibition worked, and I say worked in the sense that there was far less alcohol consumption. When something is illegal, people tend not to use it.
Right.
Not entirely. You still have people who use it. Once prohibition was repealed, then alcohol consumption went way up. Same thing's happening with marijuana. Once people, they conflate what's legal with what is healthy. They're like, oh, surely they wouldn't legalize something that's not good for me.
Right.
But the flip side of that is, and you can say the same thing about the lottery or gambling. When it's illegal, less of it happens. When it's legalized, more happens. But the flip side of that is when something's illegal, there's a nasty black market. There's a nasty mob scene. So the mob controlled alcohol.
Yeah.
The mob controlled gambling. I do worry that with marijuana, once it's been in the open, if we were to suppress it, we would be encouraging criminal elements. So I think we are better off having it in the open, but I think we do need to have an education campaign.
I think, yeah, or and an enforcement though.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be some kind of consequence to the driving while high. I think we've slacked on that. There was back in the started, I guess, in the 80s and 90s, don't drink and drive. And to the point now where I think it is pretty verboten in our society. It's like call an Uber.
Yep.
Okay. Get a ride.
I agree that the same standard should apply to marijuana.
And we've been I think we've been lax on it.
But I think that's part of the education is, there was an op-ed in the Boston Globe last week, a woman saying, I was addicted to weed. I had to recover from that before I felt like I could be present and have children. The comments were, I thought, wow, these people are very sensitive to the notion that marijuana is not an unmitigated good. How dare you criticize marijuana?
Well, when you get into the potheads.
It's not just that. It's that they were sold a bill of goods by the industry. I mean, there was heavy money and heavy advertising behind the campaign in Massachusetts.
So, all right. So we can get a little deeper into this now. Since the Cannabis Control Commission controls cannabis under your office or your future office, and I'm going to speak.
Well, shared, it's a funky hybrid, but I would have significant influence on the Cannabis Control Commission, very significant influence.
The marijuana that is produced today is significantly stronger than it was even 20 years ago, right? Because the science of it, they've been able to distill the different varieties of plants and get it to be more potent, where there are medical studies now that come out where it's directly influencing psychosis, and it is the
clear link to schizophrenia. The development of schizophrenia is significantly linked to marijuana use.
So there's been this urban myth for many years. Oh well, marijuana isn't physically addictive; it's psychologically addictive. All right, well, tell that to somebody who's addicted and has a problem with it, because now they're getting high all the time. It's stronger. It's causing these severe mental issues, paranoia. You're seeing this more and more and more. How impactful can you as treasurer directing the executive to dial it back so that when people are getting high, they're not getting obliterated in the sense that, I'll go out and I'll have a martini, but the martini is not, whatever the proof of it is I'm not under any delusion of what the substance I'm putting into my body can do to me, and I won't have any. And nobody's spiking my drink with when I have a martini. There's that level that all humans know that when they're consuming the good, it has this level of impact. You don't know that anymore, right?
So this goes back to the second part of Diana DiZoglio's audit that she released in August. So I said part of it was the lack of process, lack of clarity around permitting, potential corruption, abuse in terms of some having to pay, others not having to pay. But the second part that she was getting to is exactly what you're talking about. There's been a failure to do the kind of systematic testing that would give people mission critical information and protect public health.
Right.
So the simple answer is start doing the testing.
Yeah.
Start creating standards.
So we don't. I guess we don't even really know what that percentage of THC is that should be in a dosage
Yeah.
of, and we got to get there, and we got to get there quick.
I actually do think President Trump's actions this past week in reclassifying marijuana are important because we do need to do research. We do need to have data as to what happens where, when, and why with this substance. We're really kind of shooting in the dark. It's kind of a wild west right now.
Yeah.
As you say, who knows what levels they're getting.
Right.
And emergency rooms are getting children who've eaten very condensed forms of marijuana, thinking that they were just getting a gummy bear.
Yeah, yeah.
So we really, I'm a big believer in information. Bring it back to Belmont. We made a lot of progress in terms of budgeting and our budgeting process simply by putting together 3 to 5 year outlooks of our revenue and expense streams. And all of a sudden, if the budget doesn't balance, it doesn't balance. And all of a sudden, progressives, moderates, and conservatives could all look at the same set of numbers.
Yeah.
It gave us the basis for a conversation about what are our trade-offs, what do we value. And I think the same is true if you're looking at something like marijuana. We need data.
Yeah.
But we do need to get in there. So I think there's stuff that has to be done immediately. There's certainly testing protocols that ought to be. And other, the irony is that Massachusetts was supposed to be a model for other states. Nobody would look to us for a functional cannabis system. I think we need to look to other states to see who has done testing well, who has done licensing well, who has done permitting well, who has done driving while high well.
I think it's probably also new that there isn't.
May not be.
It does not. I think it would. Your office could be a spearhead that, because I don't know that it exists, because it was Colorado a couple years before Massachusetts, and then
Washington State,
Oregon, a handful of others, and then us, and it's all been in the past 5 to 10 years where I don't know if there's enough data to you'd have to probably build it. Yeah, but I think it's a really important thing. It'd be a good campaign point, because I think people, when they're smelling weed when they're driving, it hits home to everybody in the Commonwealth.
Well, this is the thing. You can't drink alcohol out of a bottle on the common, but you can smoke a joint.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I don't know, how do you reconcile that? Because it's public intoxication. Yeah. It really is. But
they both are.
True.
And frankly, someone drinking the alcohol, they're going to get drunk, but at least I'm not smelling and breathing it.
Well, also, though, you don't necessarily know 100% what they're smoking.
No. And
I mean, stuff's laced with everything now.
Do they know what they're smoking?
No.
So I think there's absolutely room for cracking down on how it's used. That's really probably not the treasurer's. That's really more
it's a law enforcement issue. Sure.
It's a law enforcement issue, but the treasurer can certainly inform it. And this gets to another thing that I think the treasurer can do. I started this by saying I'm running because of a cost of living crisis. There is no voice on Beacon Hill right now speaking for the taxpayers. So my tagline is a taxpayer's treasurer. I want to be the voice up there saying every single one of these dollars comes out of somebody's pocket. Every single one of these dollars is precious and sacred and represents somebody's sweat, blood, tears, labor, call it. We've really lost that sense of respecting the taxpayer. We've really lost that sense that these dollars matter and that they can be conserved efficiently and effectively.
The website is Vote Dionne, VOTEDIONNE.com. Elizabeth Dionne has been my guest today. This is Back to Normal. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. You get after it.
I would love to come back.
Go get after it.
We have more data to share.
Yeah, go get after it, and we're going to, it's going to be a long campaign.
It is.
But I'm happy to drive this home, because I can't stand the lazy nature on which I'm subjected to these Democrat politicians that don't do their job and are just hacks and just bloat and waste and fraud. It's got to end, and we need more responsible people like yourself to get into public office.
And just remind your voters, the treasurer's job is the most important state job that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Educate yourselves.
Clearly.
There's a lot of state real estate, a lot of finances. There's a lot of your tax dollars flow through this office. You need to pay attention and see what's going on there.
Excellent. All right. With that, we'll end this episode of Back to Normal. I'm going to put in a little plug. If you would like to go help out the Mass GOP, please do so on the QR code on the screen. and the link. Donate today. We do need help. The state party needs help to help people like Elizabeth get elected and continue to hopefully have a successful 2026. And I think we're well poised. We're gonna have a good slate on the ballot, and
I'm impressed.
Yeah, and we're definitely gonna do well. So I'm glad one, my hat's off to you for running. It is if you're out there in political land and you've never run for office and you have an opinion, when you run for office, and I've run for office.
Yes, you have.
It is. I can guarantee you, it is eye-opening as to what happens. So anybody who puts their name out there to get on the ballot and run for political office has my respect, because it's a hard road, and everybody's a Monday morning quarterback of what people should do and what campaigns. But unless you actually get out there and do it, they really don't know what they're talking about. So thank you very much. And we will have you back on in 2026. We are wrapping up 2025, and it's been great. So good luck. And
Thanks
go to
so much.
votedionne.com and help Elizabeth out.
Really appreciate it. Need every vote and every dollar I can get.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.